it's the same format as the last one for your review. Here it comes.
Additional questions or comments with regards to this application from the committee?
I think that the team scored it well. Something that I struggled with a little bit in reading, and this may not ever happen again. I mean, with this, they had only had a grant of like $2,300 in the past, and we had said that there would be a $10,000 minimum. And I imagine it wasn't a very expensive program, and that the proposal to add to that grant a 411 system for teens, I wasn't sure was going to be successful in Topeka or necessary and so on. So I was not real comfortable with that, and so probably not an issue at this point with this grant today, but in the future as we look at, again, new programs.
And I think that I would just caution us as a body to allow the scoring mechanism to work itself through the staff and,
Right.
and not manage the organization's outputs. I think that that's why, I mean, what they're
Exactly.
providing in their programs.
Exactly.
I think that that's where.
I think it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I think it worked.
Okay. Again, this is another grant that would not be funded. Next organization?
United Way Successful Connections, 15 out of 15 on city priorities, 10 out of 10 scope of project, 3 out of 5 on outcomes clear, 0 out of 10 on duplication, 10 out of 20 on outcomes on prior grants, 10 out of 10 effective management, 5 out of 10 client input, 3 out of 5 org leadership, 5 out of 5 past grant administration, 5 out of 5 government partnerships, and 5 out of 5 on private partnerships, for a total of 71.
Comments or questions with regards to this grant? None? Mr. Schmidt?
Was the duplication just failed to answer?
Yep, the 0 means they did not answer the question on page 5, number 5.
Okay. No other questions? Okay, seeing that there's no other questions, with the scoring and at the place that it was at, this grant is not funded. Next.
East Topeka Council on Aging, 15 out of 15 city priorities, 10 out of 10 scope of project, 0 out of 5 on outcomes clear, 5 out of 10 on duplication, 0 out of 20 on outcomes prior grants, 10 out of 10 effective management, 10 out of 10 client input, 1 out of 5 org leadership, 1 out of 5 past grant administration, 3 out of 5 government partnerships, and 5 out of 5 private partnerships, for a total of 60.
Any questions on this application from the committee? No. Mr. Schmidt? This grant scored a 60%. At this point, this grant is not funded. Final preventative and counseling services?
The last one's Marion Clinic, 15 out of 15 city priorities, 10 out of 10 scope of project, 3 out of 5 on outcomes clear, 5 out of 10 on duplication, 0 out of 20 on prior outcomes, 10 out of 10 effective management, 5 out of 10 client input, 1 out of 5 org leadership, 3 out of 5 past grant administration, 0 out of 5 on government partnerships, and 5 out of 5 on private partnerships, for a total of 57.
Questions or comments with regards to this application from the committee? Ms. Hiller?
I think the staff scoring, I mean, I had questions, but
Mhm.
I think the staff addressed them.
Okay. Seeing none, this grant is not funded. At this point in time, we move to the emergency aid organizations. Application number 1.
Did do a recalculation based off of yesterday's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, you allocated 25.5 for the Tier 1 Catholic Charities. So the remaining amount would be 76,250. And I just did option 1 on this one, which was percentage by ranking, and then minus the shortage that we had in order to fund at the 76,250.
Okay. We see here in total option 1, which I think is what we have decided that we're gonna try to go with, how these funds would be balanced. Would you please proceed with application 1?
Sure. Salvation Army, 15 out of 15 on city priorities, 10 out of 10.
Do
scope
we
of-
have those?
Oh, did I not hand these
Oh,
out?
no, I'm just scrambling for.
Yeah,
papers.
Yeah, they're here.
We do
gave
have
them
them
to
from
us
yesterday.
yesterday.
I just had to, thank you.
You're fine.
Too many papers.
All right, 15 out of 15 city priorities, 10 out of 10 scope of project, 3 out of 5 on outcomes clear, 5 out of 10 duplication, 0 out of 20 on outcomes prior grants, 5 out of 10 effective management, 10 out of 10 client input, 1 out of 5 org leadership, 0 out of 5 past grant administration, 5 out of 5 government partnerships, and 5 out of 5 private partnerships, for a total of 59 out of 80. This is one that we did not have outcomes on prior grants, so it was not calculated in the number.
Okay. Does the committee have any questions with regards to the evaluation of this grant?
Fish from my notes, I tried to gather everything together. Not in particular. I did note that in looking at all the emergency aid ones, they struggled with outcomes.
Yes.
Something we may want to address
Mhm.
as a group going forward.
Mm-hmm. And I think that your point is very well taken, and here is where the magic of using the percentage of their score
Mm-hmm.
is a huge reflection on that,
Mm-hmm.
which would hopefully, the goal is that this process will incite the organizations to know where they could do better, and it helps the organizations then be successful in their next application.
But it is also challenging when you're doing crisis intervention, emergency aid, and what you're doing is feeding somebody today or giving them medicine today to work on those outcomes. And some of them did better than others in identifying. Some are just cranking it through. Others talked about those other services that either their agency itself provided, or that they made sure that they worked with others to provide, to connect people in. And again, you've really, especially if you're in a crisis situation, there has to be some long-range follow-up, at least on a sample,
Absolutely.
to see if it made a difference.
Absolutely.
Or to talk about, for instance, whether you just give utility or rent money to anybody, or whether your criteria is that it needs to be, whether it's evaluated so that it looks like if you do this, they're actually gonna get to stay for a long period of time, rather than just throwing money at at 1 month's payment and then having them on the street anyway.
Mhm.
And I know that some organizations do that. Nobody really addressed that, and I think it will help with outcomes and for us to see what people are doing to help long-term as well as just today in these grants.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Hiller. Mr. Schmidt, do you have any comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay, this grant is allocated 46,304. Second organization?
Doorstep, 15 out of 15 city priorities, 10 out of 10 scope of project, 3 out of 5 outcomes clear, 0 out of 10 on duplication, 5 out of 20 on outcomes prior grants, 10 out of 10 effective management, 10 out of 10 client input, 5 out of 5 org leadership, 5 out of 5 past grant administration, 0 out of 5 government partnerships, and 5 out of 5 private partnerships, for a total of 68.
Questions with regards to this application?
Same comments.
Same comments?
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt, do you have any comments or questions?
Nope.
Seeing none, the grant is awarded 15,196. Final application?
Let's Help, 15 out of 15 city priorities, 10 out of 10 scope of project, 3 out of 5 outcomes clear, 5 out of 10 duplication, 5 out of 20 outcomes prior grants, 10 out of 10 effective management, 5 out of 10 client input, 5 out of 5 org leadership, 3 out of 5 past grant administration, 0 out of 5 government partnerships, 5 out of 5 private partnerships, for a total of 66.
Any questions or comments from the committee at this point in time with regards to this application?
Actually, for all 3 of them, all 4 of them really, a 0, when you scored a 0 on duplication, it was because people didn't answer
They
it.
did not answer.
But if it's 5, they probably answered it, but it wasn't
And
It was
satisfactory.
explained.
Mhm.
And we're looking for a 10 here, where agencies like these emergency aid agencies are all doing very similar things. What would you say we're looking for? What were people missing?
Well, they would all be duplicating, so they all would receive a 5 if they answered the question correctly. Was that what you're referring to?
Well, I guess my thought is that if, that's like saying that having 5 daycares is not good and there should be 1 big daycare. I mean, if together if the need is so great and they're not serving the same people over and over again, which is what MacLink helps do, and I think all of our applicants are hooked in with MacLink, then it's just more challenging if they're doing it a little bit different way or their location is a little bit different, and that seems to work for the clientele that they are serving, and they are not duplicating because they're working through a combined system, then we might at some point. There was a time, for instance, when people got together and actually we used the agency that we fund, CRC, for that. Often if there's a sense that there's duplication of services unnecessarily, and so that grant dollars could be better used by consolidating some services, and that's happened with emergency aid, there have been discussions and other things, then okay. But other than that, which might be a recommendation that would come out of a committee like ours in the future.
Correct.
But if there's enough need that we need 4, let's say.
But the challenge,
Yeah.
what I would come back at that is that the challenge that we were looking at when we were looking at this application
Mhm.
and the way that the city dollars were gonna be spent,
Mm-hmm.
then you look at the fact that the city is one organization, and this one organization that is trying to spread out the dollars was trying to ensure that the duplication amounts were minimal so that the administrative costs were not such a bigger burden for the organizations, which is where we go back to the importance of us looking at duplication, because when we started the conversation of the policy making of the application, we discussed that this was one of the very important criteria that we wanted to ensure, that we were not continuing the duplication of services. If we were gonna really be focused on how we were gonna administer the grant, that we were gonna really look at all of the parameters that would help us be more effective. And even though I wholeheartedly understand where you're going,
Mhm.
because I do understand, maybe somebody who's walking from North Topeka has a much quicker access to Let's Help, because they're right there on that path. Or somebody that lives in Center Topeka that, it's they're going a doorstep because they live very close by. However, as the city, we are one entity serving entities within our city, and I think that what we were looking for in this goal was ensuring that if we have organizations that were doing duplicitous work, were we really gonna go ahead and fund everybody, or were we going to try to establish which organizations were more successful so that we could just, again, put most of the dollars there?
That was my point though, because if they're gonna get dinged, every emergency aid agency is gonna get no more than a 5 if that's the case,
Mhm.
unless we dig deeper into what the situation is citywide or how they're managing those programs, because they're all in one pool, they're all gonna be the same. It's not gonna help separate the better managed ones. It's not gonna solve the problem of the fact that people spend a lot, maybe 6 months of every year, just answering the phone, telling people they don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I raised the point. It's working, yet we may have to do a little bit more. if
Deeper
we-
policy discussion.
Exactly. That was my point only.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, that being said, grant score to 66, being funded at 14,749. At this point in time, we have concluded our allocation process. Does the committee have any questions, any comments in closing? A debriefing of maybe what worked and what could have been better in this process?
Well, I think this process went, while long, and somewhat tedious, I think this process went well. It was a good exercise in letting everybody know what the expectations are going to be going forward, how the process is going to work. I think staff did a phenomenal job. I think there's still more work to do. The follow-up on this, meeting with organizations and, explaining their scoring is going to be critically helpful for the whole process. And I think we've done something here that's, if it lasts, will make a meaningful impact on the community of people and organizations that do this kind of work. So thank you both and all for your help.
Ms. Hiller?
I agree with Councilman Schmidt. We felt our way through establishing our work last year, establishing this, and then this process. And I appreciate the discussions we had then and this year, because I think we'll see, but I think it did work. We did get a letter of appeal from one agency.
Correct.
Since the first set of hearings, and that struck me that I think we had not anticipated that. I think we probably should either, if they come in, accept appeals at the committee level, or, and I'm not saying we need to change anything, but if part of the idea of putting this whole process in the council committee was so that people did not go appeal to the city council as a whole at budget time, or to their individual council person, then especially this first year, but probably always, I think we need to consider those appeals, hear them, read the letters, whatever it is, so that people have been fully heard. This process of hearing and discussing each application, even if we're just listening to staff and we've already set the allocations, was valuable communication for us for setting policy for next time.
Absolutely.
And for everybody. And similarly, that appeal process we will learn from, but we will also hear if people went back and thought about it and wanted to tell us something later. So I don't know if we want to consider that today or at a future
Well,
time.
I mean, if the challenge is that the organization that wrote the appeal letter is not here to represent
Understood.
themselves.
I'm just, we just got
However,
it.
they did state
Mhm.
what their intent was, and they
Mhm.
did state what their discontent was with the grant application. Has staff had an opportunity to review that letter?
I have not.
You have not? Let me provide that to you so that
Okay.
you can go ahead and read it.
Okay.
And if you can address, oh, you have it?
I do.
Okay, can
Printed
you
on
pass that
my-
on to staff? so the staff can address the concerns, and that way we could just at least acknowledge
Yeah,
publicly. I appreciate that. I was thinking of that as well, but the organization not being here.
you know, we had made the decisions and I thought, oh, we didn't think about that next step, but as I thought it through, I thought, you know, we do need
And
to
I did
deal with
read
those at the
the
committee level.
application. One of the comments that stuck with me was the comment of it's hard to get outcomes on litter. And that comment is one that we talked about with every single organization.
Yeah.
That we understood that the outcomes would be difficult to find, but however, organizations that are doing work
Okay.
are able to find an outcome. And I know that it's a frustrating process,
Mhm.
but I think that if approached with the proper heart, the staff would be absolutely delighted in helping establish those outcomes
I agree.
with the proper organizations. Any further comments to that?
I guess I would say that one comment was made that maybe they should have removed that outcome from their grant, and I would have to concur, if they were no longer doing that activity, it should not have been an outcome for the prior grant, so,
Or an output.
right,
Mhm.
yeah.
It was an output.
Client input is difficult for things like litter, but still possible. Your clients, for things like that are your residents.
Correct.
So therefore, you know, I'm speaking
Just
for
backing
myself
up,
at
this is
this
Keep
point,
America
but
Keep
Beautiful.
America beautiful.
yeah, I'm just speaking as,
Okay.
as
Is that a
just
question?
looking at the applications, what we ran across. And then, of course, the org leadership, as we saw, was a struggle for some people, but still very important that we have diverse
And
boards.
I was gonna make a comment to that. That comment also struck me because it wasn't just Keep America Beautiful, it was a lot of the organizations. And I can tell you for a fact that I know how difficult it is to try to have a volunteer board that is diverse and is engaged. But as executive directors and as organizational leaders and as a duty of boards, it is extremely important that your organization represents the community that you're serving. And it is the duty of the board and of the leadership of the organization to ensure that those pieces are all present. And it is a difficult task. I am not taking away from it. But again, the grant application process is intended to help you see what areas you can focus on, because the hopes is that it's not just going to be beneficial for the City of Topeka grant, but it really will be beneficial for other grants as a whole. The application process that we have set forth in these policies are policies that are very similar to many organizations. I don't ever recall filling out a major organization app that did not ask me what the composition of the board is. It is just a very common recurrence. I think that it's delightful that as the staff and as a body, the body decided that we wanted to be very open with regards to what the expectations were, so that those things could be rectified in the future. So, are there any other comments that the body has?
I did, as we went along, tried to make some notes as we talked about process and so on. I don't know when the timing would be, maybe at some point. I think we should do a debrief and a review.
Absolutely.
I think that
concur.
our timeline when we set this up was that it would still be this same committee, but that we would establish priorities for next year, like in January. I'm thinking that we might want to do it a lot sooner than that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we will have to reconvene in, I guess we won't have to reconvene on these allocations if the budget goes through as proposed and then the dollars are there. If somehow the dollars are not there, we will have to reconvene and adjust these grants. I think it's important that everybody understand these are tentative until the budget is passed,
Well, the hope is
or that there are recommendations.
that
they'll
the
go.
recommendation that this body is going to
Exactly.
be making is a recommendation of having had an opportunity to speak with the organization.
Exactly.
And further, what we're going to provide to the council body is an allocation to the budget of the
Absolutely.
total amount.
And I didn't mean that, but if somehow, I mean, the way our system is set up was if the council, when the budget was rolled all the way out, didn't have enough money in it, we were gonna have to go back and figure out what to do. Or if
Correct.
they gave more money, we would have to go back and figure out what to do as well.
Okay.
I I think our timing had us then kind of not doing anything until January. My inclination would be that we would either sometime over the summer, even while this is in process and while it's fresh, go ahead and review.
And I think that my comment to that was, you're spot on, in the sense that I was hoping that we would have, after the budgetary process, a debriefing meeting. And further, my other hope was that if there was a challenge with regards to the budget committee of the city council, that we would have to reconvene an emergency meeting of sorts, so that we could then sit down and work with reallocation of funds. So the door is not closed for us to meet. I feel very strongly that at this point in time, with the feedback that we've had, staff is going to be able to work preemptively on establishing suggestions for how the application is going to be modified, so that by the time that we come back after the budgetary process is concluded, we're able to then sit down and take a look at this, and that would in turn give plenty of time for the organizations to have a chance to rectify those areas that we would like to see them perform better at.
I agree. So if we thought that maybe we would reconvene in September, then.
Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
But before then, I do think if there are people that have concerns or appeals, formally or not, if those are vetted at the committee level, so that by the time we get into full budget with the council, they know that everybody's had a chance to be heard
And that
here.
is why all the organizations were invited here.
Exactly.
So that they had the opportunity of going ahead and speaking out their concerns. Going back on the process, like for example, most organizations have left right now.
Right.
And we still had time. Every single meeting we've taken comments, so that if an organization at that moment in time wanted to appeal,
Sure.
that they had the opportunity. The other great opportunity that they're being provided by the policy that we established is that once the scores and the allocations have been made, all the organizations are more than welcome to address staff immediately to work on how to better their grant. So there is a process in place. And I do appreciate the sentiment. And of course, our goal here is to be as transparent and as fair as possible. We knew that this was gonna be a difficult year, and I can tell you sincerely that I wouldn't have asked for a better team to go through this with, sincerely. At this point in time, if there's no further comments, the recommendation, yes?
Moment, sorry. First, I wanted to ask the committee, would they like us to do debriefings before the council makes a decision? Do you want us to do the debriefings immediately with the agencies?
I would say after the budget.
Well, in the RFP, it's.
Because it's in the RFP.
Awards have been made.
Exactly.
final.
But the grant
Exactly.
awards will not be final until the budget's over.
Correct, so after the budget.
So the budget will, at this point, the city manager is gonna propose the budget June 1st. The idea is that the council will wrap it up by the middle of July, but we'll actually do the final vote on it in mid-August as usual with the
Okay.
state deadline.
Okay, just
So-
wanted to clarify.
So that way, yes, so if you could please send that out to the
We will.
grantees
Okay.
in
will
a
do.
communication.
And then the other one thing that somebody just brought to my attention, CDBG, we are 76,109 over, so we would need to switch
Supplement
some
with
funding
GF.
to general fund, but that's not.
That
really
has
big.
typically been just a staff function.
Yeah, we can do that. Oh, okay.
Just pick
that's
which
fine.
ones would,
Okay. as
It's
long
and
as
okay.
you're
ideally
with that.
not to split them,
Right.
just for, that's again your call, but it just
Mhm.
makes it easier.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Okay, that being said, is there a motion to adopt, yes, sir?
We didn't
Oh, that's
allow
true.
for comment yet?
From the people that are here, are there any comments from the organizations that remain? Could you please approach the microphone?
Heidi Pickerel with Meals on Wheels, and thank you for the process. It's much appreciated. I was hoping in making the assumption that we will have an opportunity to review the score sheet and perhaps even prior to August, if we're going to debrief at that point. But I know I would really appreciate that opportunity.
More than happy to, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just a quick,
Please approach the mic.
I had an earlier outburst, I apologize. I just wanted to say, I thought, and I'm not brown nosing to use a Nathan term, I thought Brad did a, well, you were, I'm sorry, just after yesterday, it was just so funny, never mind. No, I thought that we went to an outcomes and outputs training, and I just thought it was really good, and then you sent the slides to us, so I actually used that, even though I thought I was pretty savvy on outputs versus outcomes, so if everybody went to the training, I know you struggled with it, but I just wanted to give you kudos for the training, because you go to grant trainings, and I've had them with other agencies like United Way, and you still can't quite get a feel. But we were sent the slides, so I went to the training, then I went back to the slides and used them. And I just feel like, if the other agencies struggled, I feel badly for them. But there was a training provided, so I don't, And I apologize for my earlier outburst. I don't do math very well. I think the budgets were correct, but I was going, what? Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it was a
Thank
good
you.
talk.
Thank you, and your point is well taken. I remember when Outcomes first came in and I was going to training, I probably went to 5 before it finally stuck, before it made sense. But once it makes sense, it makes sense. And so,
We were all required to be there. I don't know, and I don't want to say, I'm not sure what happened, but it was helpful, so.
It was not required, however.
It was not
we're,
required?
Looking retrospect, we would like to make it required for next year's
And that could be
grant
one of the
well,
things that you
if
suggest.
if somebody doesn't go to the training and then aces their outcomes, fine. If they don't go to the training and they don't have good
Good point.
outcomes,
Correct.
then okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other organizations that would like to address the body? Ms. Lowry?
I just kind of want to reiterate what Heidi had stated. Shelley Lowry, Let's Help. The earlier that we can do the debriefings, the better. While the grants are still fresh in our minds and we know exactly what went into each question. So if there's at all possible opportunity to do it before August, that would be really helpful to us.
I mean, the only challenge that I have with that is that it was the policy that we already instituted for this year. The nice thing about it is that even if it's in August, the grants are not gonna be sent out till when? Be open to application till next year. So, I mean, even that would allow ample time, to go ahead and look at that. A suggestion that I was going to make is, rather than the staff, my concern is staff being burdened by every single organization. If at all possible, would it be okay if staff provided a one-day seminar on the grant, even before August? Just a one day over at HND in the conference room, and just give like a 2-hour meeting in which just going over it, so that each organization would then have a chance to be there with their applications.
I would respectfully want to just defer to staff on that. 2 reasons. One, it is fresh, and that's often a window for me anyway, when I've got it all out there and I want to learn and do better. And I think the staff can make those decisions on how to handle it. The other thing is, in order for the agencies to do better outcomes reporting next spring, they need to understand what the outcomes are now and adjust their metrics so that their reporting is strong. And so again, the staff will be able to help them as needed. They may need different kinds of, we saw different things. So whatever the staff thinks on there, but for success this year and for next year's grants, people may want it now.
That's where my original question came in, because I
Yeah.
thought now would be better than later,
Okay.
where it is
Well,
it's fresh
we-
in our minds and it's fresh
We
in their
defer then
minds
to
as well.
staff, and
So
the
we'll
only
be happy to put
recommendation that I
something
do
together.
have is, I'm not telling you guys what to do, but my concern is your guys' time, so I would just humbly recommend. Yeah, I like that.
I can see the weight in terms of the fact that the council and the budget all has to play this whole thing out, but hopefully the process has gone well enough, and we'll review process, and we'll want some debrief on that from you all as well, although I think we got good feedback along the way. So.
Okay.
I think just an immediate response, speeding up this process helps a lot, because from what John said earlier, I don't have my money yet to spend for this year, for this year's current cycle. So speeding that whole process up helps us a lot too, to actually get our outcomes for the calendar year that we're working in. So thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Tim, any comments? Well, if there's no other comments, then I would entertain a motion for the full allocation of the $407,000 and all of it, yes. I'm just, the motion, I'm trying to establish a motion that we would send to council approving the allocation of the full amount of dollars that we worked on.
But that would include the first 225 as well, so it's actually
Yes,
600
everything,
something.
exactly.
What
Could
is
somebody
that
give us a number?
Corey?
No, of course you would ask me that, and I don't have that number.
Well, it's 407 plus 225.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
632,000 something,
Sounds good.
if I remember right.
I got a calculator.
We've got it, you all got calculated.
All right.
632,000? Okay, so do I hear a motion? Yes, Mr. Schmidt. Do I hear a motion to allocate $632,000 to contracted services and counseling and preventative and emergency aid grants for 2015?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Technically, that would be a recommendation to the council
Correct,
to allocate what
correct.
you said.
Mhm.
Second.
Okay, do I hear aye for approval? Everybody in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes unanimously. That being said, our meeting is near to conclusion. I want to thank all of the organizations that do all the wonderful work that you do in our community. Your work is sincerely valued. Further, again, just the staff doing this, it was phenomenal to work with you, Corey. It has been a great experience. I loved how prepared you came to every single meeting. Rochelle, the same thing with you. And not only that, but the committee of 5 people that took the time to evaluate these grants. Sincere appreciation to you as well. And also to Amber, getting minutes together and working with Corey and all of the staff has been wonderful. I say the same thing about my committee members. It's been a delight to work with both of you. So thank you very much for your hard work. Mr. Schmidt?
I just wanted to use a Nathan term, and Brown knows a little bit with the staff too. You guys did a phenomenal job. You exceed expectations every time, and I thank you for that. Thank you for your willingness to participate and to listen to us think out loud. This process is sometimes painful, but I think it serves a good purpose, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you very much, and thank you to my fellow committee members.
Ms. Hiller, any wrapping comments?
About the staff, I echo what my colleague said, but I also remember when we started this process, how passionate you were about doing it right, and that you had information and that you'd worked on it before and that it had made a difference. And so I feel good about, I appreciate your input in helping us put something together and then doing it the way you thought it should have been done. And it's really nice to see it roll out in that way. And further, with the agencies that are left, the idea of doing this kind of process on live TV, talking about everything, was pretty daunting to me. We all say we believe in transparency and so on, but these kinds of discussions generally happen behind closed doors because people are nervous about having that conversation. And not only, I think, for the committee to move forward as we have, believing in transparency and openness, but you all feeding back to us. And what we've seen is that even though those are kind of touchy conversations, you all have appreciated it. The fact that you were able to be there through the whole thing and see that whole process. So that's been very affirming to me, that even though it's difficult, that it was the right thing to do. So
Okay, well, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Tim's tweeting that, so oh well.
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a
Second.
second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, all opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you to staff on TV4.
Thanks.
I need to report what was done today, so for the 13 organizations.